So in the last video, I showed you how to build this form here where we can add copies of the initial form, and we can also take those away. We also went as far as to be able to put in a make and a model, and then we were able to double click and copy that data into the other fields to cut down on time. And then of course the serial number would be different. But now I'm going to show you how to actually process this information in PHP, and it's done a little bit differently than we typically would do it. So let's go ahead and see how we do this. So whenever we left off, this is what we had. The first thing that we need to do is make sure that our fields names have been turned into an array. The easiest way to do that is just to create open and close brackets around their name, not their ID. And then we're going to do that up here as well. So on the make, the model name, and then the serial name. Okay. All right. So inside the inside PHP, the first thing I typically do is create a placeholder, and I'll just call this output. It's going to equal null. And then down here underneath my form, I've got echo output. So whenever the page is submitted, if we need to display anything on the page after it refreshes, we can just use this default output variable to display things on the page. Okay. So first let's check to see if the form has been submitted. So we'll say if is set post submit. And the first thing that we'll do is connect to the database. So we'll say connect to DB. And my standard method of connecting to MySQL is by using a variable called MySQLi. That's going to equal a new MySQLi instance. And we'll have our server name, which is localhost for me, the username, password, and then my database was called test, if you recall. And then we'll go ahead and close this. Okay. So first, let's get the submitted variables. So we'll say the make equals the posted value of make. And then we'll just copy and paste this for the other two, for the model and the serial. All right, so let me be very clear about something, or else you will definitely spend a lot of time with a headache. You cannot sanitize these strings as they are right now. And here's why. If I was to echo out make, and let me type something in here. We'll say test make. And if I hit submit, it says array to string conversion, right? That's because we're trying to echo out an array as a string, and you can't do that. Okay, so we aren't able to sanitize this. If I try to echo out a MySQLi real escape string of make, then this is what we're going to get. Real escape string expects one parameter to be a string, but it's got an array instead. All right, so we can't use real escape string on this yet. So right now, our form is unprotected, but it won't be eventually. Okay. So with any array, in order to establish variables from that data, we have to use a for each loop. So we'll say for each, and we're going to use the make as kind of like the ID that we're going off of, or the variable that we're going off of. We'll say make as key, and we're going to instance this as a value. Okay, so right now what I could do is I could just say echo value, right? And that's going to show me the make, right? So if I just say test make and I submit the form, then it's going to show test make, right? If I add more of these and I say test 1, test 2, then I'm going to see test 1 and test 2. However, whenever I do I can't use model or serial number because I'm only referencing make as the value. So at that point, I have to use model and then reference the key to access that one. Okay, so if we do the same thing here, if I do, let's get a couple of these, test mod 1, and it'll say test mod 2, and then test mod 3. If I submit this, it's going to show test mod 1, test mod 2, test mod 3. Okay, so that's the approach that we have to make. Now at this point, you might be thinking that we can just use model equals MySQLi real escape string, and then do something like model as key, right? But whenever we try to do something like that, we end up with this kind of result here. Okay, so we can't do that either. So sanitizing our strings becomes a little troublesome whenever we do this. So the only way that I've found to actually do this is to escape it as you're inserting it into the database. Okay, so what I'll do is I will say, first we need to see if that record already exists, right? So what I'll say is we'll create a query, and we'll query will equal select ID from inventory, which was what my table name was, where serial number equals, and this is where it gets tricky, we have to break out of, we have to start our first right here, limit 1. We have to break out of our string in order to sanitize that. So what I have to do is create double quotes, that way we can break out of it. And we're going to just basically concatenate this. And that means whenever you break out of a string, to add some other form in. So we'll say MySQLi real escape string serial key. Okay, so now that will tell us if this actually exists or not. So just real quick, well, let's go ahead and do our query then. All right, so we'll just say result set equals MySQLi query, and then we're just going to reference the query variable. Okay, I can say if the result set num rows is equal to 0, then perform insert. Else, output is going to equal this record already exists. Okay, let's try this out real quick. So let me go back into phpMyAdmin. Let's copy the serial number right here. And I'm going to try to insert this into the table. We'll say test, test, and then for my serial, we'll add that. Go to submit. All right, so line 19, I have a non-object. What is 918? Let's see what it gives us. Same thing. Okay, I think the issue was I have I had that bracket there, and I'm used to querying inside of this guy here, so let's give that a shot and see what that does. Okay, so it says this record already exists. So now we can actually start inserting these into the database. Okay, so what we'll say is we'll create query again, and that's going to equal insert into inventory make model serial, and then values. And this is where things get tricky because you have to break in and out of the PHP query. The values are going to equal this, this, and this. So what I'll do here is I will break out, break back in, break out, break back in, break out, and break back in. All right, and then from here we can do MySQLi real escape string. And for the make, we can just use value. And then I'm going to copy this and I'll paste it in here. This one's going to equal the model key. And this one is going to equal the serial key. Okay. Hopefully that's correct. But we'll see. All right, so now what we have to do is actually do the insert. So we'll say insert equals MySQLi query, and then query. Now something doesn't look quite right about this, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it does. We'll find out shortly. All right, so what I can do down here is I can say if not insert, and echo MySQLi error. Else, we can just say output is equal to, and we'll just put this in a little paragraph here, successfully added, and then we can say serial key, and then come back in and close that. All right, now in a perfect world this will all work, but typically there's an error somewhere along the way just due to a bad keystroke or a missing character. So let's give this a shot. I'm going to refresh the page, and so far nothing is wrong. I'm going to add 3 of these. First we're going to have make 1, model 1, and then serial 1. And now what I can do is just double click on these and change those to 2 and 3. Do the same thing here. 2 and 3, and then we have to manually type in the serial. Serial 3. All right, so let's do a submit. All right, so looks like I missed the $sign in one of these. Yep. So it threw an error on the checking, but the query actually worked. It was just the checking that messed up, because it shows that it successfully added serial 1, 2, and 3. If I come back in and I browse, you can see now I have the make. The model's not there, but the serial's there. So let's check out what went wrong with the model. $signs. Okay. So let's do this one more time. Let me go into phpMyAdmin. Let's get rid of these results here. And let's refresh the page. Okay, so successfully added serial 1, 2, and 3. Let's go in and look here again. And now we have all 3 entries. So this can be kind of confusing to code, but it's challenging. It's fun. And at the end of it, you have something that is very efficient. Something that's usable in multiple cases. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing. I will see you on the next one.